Okay, we're now live on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just for the applicant and the applicant's legal representative's benefit, we do have Councillor Fitzgerald here, who is sitting off screen. He's not actually a member of the committee, but he's attending and won't be participating or speaking at the meeting, but just for the benefit of both of you, he's here. So number one on the agenda is to appoint a chairman. Please, can I have any nominations for the position of chairman?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Valerie White to chair, please.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Perfect. And is there any other nominations? No. Thank you. All those in favour of Councillor White, assuming the role of...
Favour.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Therefore, I can confirm that Councillor White is duly elected as chairman for the hearing. And again, just for the applicant and the applicant's rep here, Councillor Skipper couldn't make the meeting, so Councillor Whitcroft is subbing as per the front of the agenda papers. To you, Valerie.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin, can I ask my colleagues to introduce themselves, please?
I'm Councillor Whitcroft. My ward is Mitchett and Deepcut.
I'm Councillor Taylor and my ward is Chopham and Windlesham.
And I'm Councillor Valerie White and my ward is Bagshot. Thank you. To my right, I'm the committee's legal advisor, Rebecca Batten. And can I ask any other officers present to introduce themselves, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paula Barnshaw, Senior Licensing Officer.
And I'm Frances Soper, Environmental Health and Licensing Manager.
And as mentioned before, Eddie Scott, who's clerk in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, well, item 2, declarations of interest. Would any members of the subcommittee please confirm that they have no disclosable pecuniary or affected interest in the application before us this afternoon? No interest.
No interest.
Okay, thank you. All right, before we start again, I would like to check that all those present have received copies of the papers.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Right, item 3 on the agenda sets out the procedure that will be followed during the hearing. Are there any questions in relation to the process that will be followed today? No? Okay, we carry on. Item 4, determination of the application for the full variation of premises licence. Oh, I've got the wrong details here.
Yeah.
Right, I'll just say the BP garage at West End.
Yeah, sorry about that.
If we're all ready, I will call upon Paula Barnshaw, the Council's Senior Licensing Officer, to present a summary of her report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon, everyone. The subcommittee is asked to determine an application to vary the existing premises licence made by BP Oil UK Limited for Gordon's SF Connect at 87 Guildford Road, West End, Woking. The application to vary was received on the 17th of March and was subsequently advertised correctly in the Surrey Advertiser in accordance with regulations set by statute. During the consultation period, we received a number of representations. Section 35(3) of the Licensing Act 2003 require us to consider these representations before the application to vary the licence is determined. The current premises licence for Gordon's SF Connect allows the sale of alcohol daily between 8 AM and 10 PM, 7 days a week. The proposed variation is to extend the current permitted hours for the sale of alcohol to 6 AM daily. If approved, the hours of sale would become 6 AM to 10 PM daily. The application also requests permission to remove the conditions in Annex 2 found on page 25 of your agenda and replace them with new conditions found on pages 15 to 16. The new conditions relate to all 4 of the licensing objectives. Responsible authorities were consulted on the proposed variation. We did not receive any representations. 7 separate relevant representations were received from residents expressing concerns with regard to the potential for noise nuisance relating to the prevention of public nuisance licensing objective. 3 of these representations were subsequently withdrawn as residents were under the mistaken impression that the premises would be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is not the case, as planning restrictions only permit the opening hours to between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. The remaining relevant representations are copied in your hearing pack. Subsequently, the representation from the parish council, that's also been withdrawn, but it was too late to amend the agenda pack. When considering this application, members are required to have regard to the relevant statutory and local guidance, with particular regard to the need for appropriateness, consistency and proportionality of any conditions that might be attached should the application be granted. Committee members will have seen concerns in the representations that are not relevant or material to the application to vary premises licence being considered today. Matters which are not material considerations but are included in the representations and should not therefore be taken into account when determining the application are as follows. Concerns relating to the general area surrounding the licensed premises, or perhaps not in the immediate locality, and the antisocial behaviour of individuals not directly associated with the premises cannot be addressed by the hearing today. This is a matter for the police to address. Only concerns raised regarding the application may be considered. Will the grant of the licence cause disturbance to residents in the locality of the licensed premises? Could measures be put in place to mitigate this disturbance? Could a more stringent cleansing policy prevent litter escaping the site to be put in place? The licensing subcommittee into its own merits. However, in light of the relevant representations, there are a number of options available. The subcommittee could impose additional conditions on the licence which are appropriate and proportionate for the promotion of the licensing objectives and which deal with the concerns of those making representations. Examples of conditions are: refuse collection shall not take place between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. Deliveries to the premises shall not take place between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. Cleaning of the premises shall not take place between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. When considering the application and representations, there are a number of options available to the subcommittee when determining this application. They are as follows. Members may grant the variation as requested in the application, grant the variation to the hours, but leave the conditions as existing, exclude any of the licensable activities from the scope of the licence, modify the existing conditions of the licence, including adding one or more of the suggested conditions I have outlined, reject the whole or part of the application. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Obviously, the panel have carefully read the written representations from the interested parties, and as we've been advised, some of those representations have been withdrawn, but there are others. There are actually no speakers here today to make representations, but we still have to confirm that we will only be considering the application in relation to the 4 licensing objectives, which are prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. As there are no public speakers, we'll go straight on, and I call upon the applicant to outline their case.
Thank you and good afternoon. I think you can probably see me. I can barely see you because of the rather wide angle of the camera. but can you just confirm that you can see and hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Excellent.
See you and hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sugan is here from, believe it or not, BP, not QD. The BP seems to have been reversed into QD, Sugan. Sort that out. Thank you for hearing us this afternoon. We're a little bit surprised and disappointed that this application has required a hearing and to take up your time. There appears to have been some confusion on the part of local residents in the belief that we were somehow applying for a 24-hour operation, which has never been the case. We are already open 6 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, and our alcohol license is from 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. So the sole purpose of this application was to bring the alcohol license in line with the opening hours, which in turn are in line with the planning the planning hours for this store. Your policy recognises the government guidance on this, that shops, stores and supermarkets should generally be able to match their trading hours unless there are good reasons to restrict those hours, and you would need some evidence to support those good reasons if you were minded to refuse the application. I was trying to make a note as Paula was speaking. I was a little bit concerned. This isn't a license review. This is an application for a variation. So I would hope that one of the options on the table is not to remove a licensable activity. That would apply in a review, not in an application to vary a license. And in terms of the conditions that were read out, I just made a very brief note, but those conditions seem to relate to the operation as a whole, which would be applicable on a license review. We are actually only talking about the 2 hours between 6 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock in the morning. So if you heard some evidence today, or had evidence that the grant of the variation of the extra 2 hours is likely to cause an increase in crime and disorder, or increase in litter or noise, then of course it would be within your discretion to impose conditions that would impact on those times. But I would submit that it wouldn't be appropriate to restrict the operation of the store generally as a consequence of this application. It's always difficult when residents are not here. I know that your licensing officer tried to mediate because there was a clear view that the application had been misunderstood. There are no representations from any of your expert responsible authorities. That includes the police, environmental health, the licensing authority, trading standards, and of course planning. Whenever we apply for a variation of hours, we also look at the conditions on the license, and we just update the conditions. So I think in this case it was a matter of moving from challenge 21 to challenge 25. So I would have thought that would meet your approval. The industry standard has moved over the years from challenge 21 to challenge 25. We're not aware of any complaints regarding litter or noise or light pollution or anything like that. It's certainly not used as a meeting place for youths, and unless the youth in the area behave differently to my children, I would have thought the idea of youth congregating between 6 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock in the morning is fairly remote. So I'm grateful that the Parish Council, once the application was explained to them by your licensing officer, the Parish Council has withdrawn its representation. So I don't really have a great deal more to say. Very happy to answer any questions that you may have, but I hope that you would agree that this is a fairly straightforward application, and one that under ordinary circumstances would have been dealt with under delegated authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? No questions. Okay. Right, summing up phase. At this point in the proceedings, I will ask the applicant's representative to sum up their case, and I would ask that you do not introduce any new information or evidence at this stage.
Thank you. I don't have a very long summing up. I would ask that the application be granted. It's in line with your policy. It's in line with the Secretary of State's guidance, the Home Office guidance. We're the application is really just to line up the alcohol hours with the shop hours. It's a management matter as opposed to a wish to sell lots more alcohol. We don't expect to sell a great deal between 6 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock in the morning, but we do want to be able to open the whole of the store rather than to have part of the store shuttered off for those 2 hours. That's really the extent of it. Again, if you are minded to do anything else in terms of the conditions, I'd be very grateful, please, for the opportunity to readdress you. We've had some real benefits from the online hearings. One of the problems with the online hearings has been that we haven't always had the opportunity to discuss conditions which are in the minds of committees, as would be the case if we were in the same room. So very happy to sit here and wait while you make your decision. And if there's anything that we haven't offered that you are considering, I'd be grateful for the opportunity to readdress you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, just to confirm, have you said all you wish to say in support of your case?
Well, yes, I could speak for a lot longer if there were any questions, or if you felt that any of the points raised by the residents are not covered by what I've said, or if they are relevant. It is difficult because a lot of what has been said is not really relevant to the application, as Paula suggested in her opening to you. So I'm not trying to belittle anything that's been said, but in terms of the actual application, I don't have anything more to offer at this stage unless you have questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, now the committee will leave the room to deliberate, but I would ask that you all remain on the call in case we have any further points of clarification which we may require. Thank you.
already asked.
Mr. Botkai, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Mr. Botkai, Rebecca Batten. The committee would like a point of clarification, please. I'm looking at your applicant's planning grant, and I don't see anything in relation to delivery hours, refuse collection hours. Are there any constraints on that on the premises at all?
Well, we wouldn't normally see those restraints on a premises license. So BP has 300 or so premises licenses. It doesn't normally restrict deliveries, waste, etc. I'm not quite sure. Is that the question? Whether those conditions should have been offered?
It was just something that the panel were unclear about. Whether there were any restrictions in place. I appreciate it wouldn't normally be on a licensing application. The question was more about the practical, what's happening on the ground. So what time do scheduled deliveries tend to arrive and refuse collections?
Is that deliveries of alcohol or fuel? All deliveries?
Yeah.
So I don't know whether we've got that information here. Sugan, are you able to assist at all about the normal process for delivery?
Sorry, I don't have any information at the minute. I can get that information if you need it.
I mean, the stores will generally have an early morning delivery because people want to see fresh milk. They want to see the daily newspapers and fresh produce in the store. So the object would normally be a delivery early morning, not necessarily 6 o'clock in the morning, but more like between 7 and 9, but also trying to avoid school traffic.
I think it's after 7 p.m. Oh, sorry, 7 a.m. or 8 a.m.
Yeah,
somewhere between there.
So that's likely to be the main delivery of the day.
That's right, yes.
And then the fuel delivery, although obviously not relevant to this application, fuel delivery is on a circuit, isn't it? As to how that operates.
That's right, yeah. It just depends on the fuel levels as well. So I think the site should be operating according to the planning concern when they initially offered, especially with the delivery restriction and.
Yeah. The refuse, I believe that's private contract. Do you know when they collect? So,
sorry, the site team normally pick up the waste from the forecourt. Is this something you're asking on that, or?
I think this is a planning issue because they've got planning permission to open 6 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock in the evening.
That's right, yeah.
So this application is about whether we can sell alcohol between 6 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock in the morning. It wouldn't make any difference to the refuse collection from the store. I'm a little bit puzzled by the question, but we can go back and find out more information and provide that if it's a concern.
That's okay. It's not at your fingertips. I think it was just a point of clarification.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. believe it was a refusal.
Good afternoon again to everybody. Thank you for waiting.
I don't think they can hear us.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. After careful consideration of all the information presented to the subcommittee, both written and orally from the applicant, in the licence variation application of SF Connect 87 Guildford Road, West End, Woking, in respect of extending the hours for the sale of alcohol from 800 hours to 600 hours. Representations were made by Mr. Bodke from Winkworth Sherwood LLP on the applicant's behalf. Mr. Bodke, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, I do apologise.
You're doing very, it's absolutely spot on. Thank you.
Thank you. Offered oral submissions and highlighted how BP Oil Limited will robustly promote the 4 licensing objectives relevant to this licence variation, and highlighted that no statutory representations were made and that no complaints had been received that they are aware of in relation to the noise or litter. Mr. Harper and Mr. Boundy had made representation but were not present at the hearing, although their concerns were noted by the subcommittee. The subcommittee have come to the decision that the applicant for the permanent variation to the licence in respect of Gordon's FS Garage Connect West End shall be granted on the basis that granting the application would not have an adverse impact on the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives, providing that the conditions as set out in the original licence remain in place. The subcommittee would like to draw the applicant's attention to the council's statement of licensing policy at, sorry, I can't read that, 14.4.3, that the licensing authority expects all licence holders to consider the impact of noise on neighbours or those otherwise impacted, and to organise deliveries where possible during the day and at a reasonable time, preventing nuisance to neighbouring residents. I would ask that you note that a decision letter will be sent to you in the next 5 working days, and this letter takes precedence over the oral decision I have just given to you. Subcommittee's decision is binding upon you and the licensing authority. If you are dissatisfied with the decision of the licensing subcommittee in this case, you may appeal against its decision to the Guildford Magistrates Court. I'd like to thank everybody for their time and wish you.
Before we close the proceedings, I don't think you meant to say, but you did say that the decision is to grant in accordance with the existing licence conditions. I hope you meant in accordance with the conditions in the application.
Yes.
Can we just clarify that, because it's very important, because otherwise you're refusing part of the application. We would have to appeal. I don't think you meant that.
It's correct, yeah.
So we've got some new conditions that are fine.
So include conditions. Yes, it does include the new conditions.
So the conditions as per the application. Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate it.
Do apologise.
Okay, thank you.
On that note, I wish you all a good afternoon and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
You happy to stop recording?
Thank you very much, Andy and Sean.
No problem.
It was nowhere that long, was it, in the end?
Thank you.
No, very happy.
A real thing.